Come, spellweavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome back to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, where we are making old school young again. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and I am all set for a great conversation tonight with the returning Legacy Game Mastering. I'm looking forward to our discussion on all things gatekeeping. I'm going to keep my introduction short here. Just want to remind everyone that you can find me on social media at the following links, which you'll see down here scrolling on the bottom: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Those are my primary platforms. Twitter has been popping off recently. I've really appreciated the support you guys have been giving me for my threads that I've been doing every day. You know, I really enjoy writing those. I enjoy talking with all of you guys who are, leaving comments on them. So keep it up. I definitely enjoy the engagement, and I love having these discussions with everyone. Also, everyone, remember to like, share, and subscribe if you like what you see here and you want your friends, loved ones, players, game masters, and mailmen to know that I am doing the stream. That is the best way to do it, so the algorithm picks us up. And real quick, before I bring my guest on, I've got one really exciting announcement here. For those of you who did not catch me on Natural Ones last night, I have a TeePublic store now. Check it out. Rollin' Bones Bonehead Emporium on TeePublic. There are 3 designs available right now. There is the Rollin' Bones main logo t-shirt. There is the RP Gorillas unit patch t-shirt. And there is the Bonehead t-shirt if you want to identify yourself as a bonehead, as a member of this collective of silly people. So yeah, that's what I've got available right now. I'll be updating these on the regular just as ideas occur to me. We'll see what all ends up on the Bonehead Emporium, but for now, these shirts are available, and they are currently $16 instead of the usual $22 for an additional 1 day and 18 hours and counting. So that is exciting, and I am so glad to be able to share stuff like that with you guys. And if I ever see anyone in public wearing a Rollin' Bones t-shirt, I might hug you. I can't promise that I'll be able to restrain myself. I might actually give you a hug. So if you're not a hugger, be aware of that. Anyway, let me introduce my guest this evening. As I said at the top of the show, it is Legacy Game Mastering. You know him from YouTube. He is a fantastic RPG commentator. Welcome back, man.
Yay, I'm glad I came back, and I'm glad this time, like I was telling you earlier, I'm glad I don't have the flu this time. Yay!
Absolutely. No flu. It's always better to not be sick than to be sick.
Yes, it is. I had a blast on the show, but those days from Sunday to about Friday or Saturday of that week was some of the most miserable I have been in about 10 years. I wasn't that miserable when I had COVID.
Mm-hmm. Orcus Dorcas in chat here. Bonehead, nice. Still trying to find something that works for Titterpigs podcast that won't get censored. Piglets?
I don't know. I don't know where to go with that one, buddy.
There's something a little bit weird about calling your supporters piglets. I understand that, but that might be your most family friendly. You can't. Are you gonna call them titties? I don't know.
I don't know, man. That might actually sell. Oh, great! Look, it's Crafty Matt. Quick, we have to disconnect the stream.
All right, everyone out. Crafty's here.
We all know he's a 5e. He's one of those 5e people, dirty, rotten scoundrels they are.
Absolutely. And Devil's Theater, thank you so much for coming. I'm glad that you enjoyed the show on, with Basic Expert last night, and I'm glad that you decided to stop by and check out my joint here on Rolling Bones. So welcome. I hope you'll stick around.
Honestly,
right.
Matt, if I really gave a crap what people played, I just don't care. As long as you and your table are having fun, don't try to impose your shit on me, though. Yeah, that's how I've always felt about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, tonight we have an interesting topic, and one that has a lot of baggage, a lot of controversy hanging around it, and this is the notion of gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is one of those words that I absolutely hate. I hate it's up there with gaslighting as far as like words that I despise, because it's a word people weaponize. It's a word where people are always saying either, "Oh, you're gatekeeping, you're keeping me out," or "Hell yes, we're gatekeeping." It's always just like, it's a weapon. It's a bludgeon that people use against each other, and it's very often misunderstood and misused. So let's kind of begin with that as a concept. What are your thoughts on gatekeeping, and how do you define it?
Okay, so I'm gonna incorporate some more quick. Matt, you can gatekeep something that's publicly available, and I'm gonna explain here in a little bit why, because I want to give an anecdote that explains how our community here gatekeeps not only tabletop RPGs but the tabletop space in general. It's really freaking nefarious. It's kind of gross. But gatekeeping, so there's two types of gatekeeping that you can talk about. There's what some people have termed table keeping, which is you get people at your table who are poisonous and toxic, and you force them out of your table. And you try to make it impossible for them to enjoy your table, to enjoy tables like yours. And that's a good, healthy way of gatekeeping. Because what it does is it prevents people from creating toxic spaces, hurting other people, damaging the local hobby community, and things like that. That's a good kind of gatekeeping. And then there's the gatekeeping as people tend to use it, which is you're trying to block people from access to a hobby space by locking people out based on whatever, XYZ. Generally, right now, we see it in terms of politics and identity, but it can be literally, you can gate people from the hobby for any number of reasons. It does not have to be politics and identity. Mm-hmm. And what you're seeing a lot of online is a lot of these, of the weirdo class, they really are trying to gatekeep people out. Mm-hmm. They are writ large trying to make the hobby inhospitable to people they don't like. Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong kind of gatekeeping. It's fine if they want to go run Thirsty Sword Lesbians and keep every straight person from the table. That's their business on their tables. But you don't get to tell me I'm not allowed to enjoy that game because I'm straight and a white guy. It doesn't matter if that's who the game is written for. For whatever reason, I like it, then I like it. And you don't get the right to tell me I can't like it. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even with that, like we're getting into where this phrase is used differently by so many different people, because Crafty, like he says, if you can buy the book from the store, run it for your friends, then that guy over there is not gatekeeping you. So what it comes down to a lot of times is whether or not, whether or not you let other people's opinion affect you, is whether or not you're considering yourself gate kept. Now there is, there are circumstances where, like you go to a certain store or you go to a certain convention and they're like, well, we don't want your kind here, or we don't like the games that you run. We're not going to let you run here. That's a kind of gatekeeping as well. And I will turn that over to you because you have a very specific story of this happening.
So to go on that point right before I jump into anecdote, there's two insidious forms of it right now. One of them is conventions asking you to list your pronouns. Mm-hmm. That's a red fucking flag that they're trying to keep certain people out of the convention. And mask and vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
Those are two kinds of gatekeeping.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to kind of understand where I'm coming at from this, you have to understand, I told this story on my channel. If you watch the video, then you understand it. You've already heard this. So our local community here, I'm going to use the Warhammer community as an example, but it applies to our 5e and Pathfinder communities as well. They have literally taken over every public space to an extent where if you try to enjoy things that are not Warhammer here, you are ostracized. You are not welcome in this community here. You are not welcome as a tabletop wargamer unless you play Warhammer. And they will take over all the space in the store. They will mock your choices. They will not talk to you. They will tell other people not to talk to you. They are absolutely 100% trying to gatekeep the community for one game. And it's bullshit. And that is gatekeeping. And nobody can argue against that. That is a form of gatekeeping, because what it does is it tries to create an inhospitable environment for people. And it's the same thing with 5e players. Most people around here don't play anything but 5e. Float your boat, good. But you don't get to go take every space up in a game store that's set aside for anybody and try to ostracize people who don't like 5th edition. We shouldn't be forced to be driven into our homes just because we can't find a local place to play. We should feel free to go out into the public and play whatever we want.
Yeah. And
when you don't feel comfortable doing that, it is gatekeeping. You're right, Matt. I can just play at my house, which I do with some of my games. But, I'm trying to get Song of Ice and Fire started up in this area because it's really big in other areas around us. Knoxville's got a very healthy Song of Ice and Fire community. So does Hickory. These are all places Ryan knows. So I'm not going to explain where they're at. But so does Greenville. They all have pretty healthy communities for Song of Ice and Fire and some other miniatures games. And you will not find them here. Literally, you cannot find people playing games that are basically not Warhammer, not in public, not at the local game store. There's 2 big game stores that host public events, and neither one of them have routine, regular space set aside for other games. It's always set aside for Warhammer. It's set aside for Warhammer. It's set aside for 5e. It's set aside for Pathfinder. That is it. On Saturday afternoons at one of our stores, you can't get your foot in the door because there's so many 5e players there. They literally take over the whole store.
Yeah.
And that is a form it's an insidious, it's an underhanded way to gatekeep people out. Because if you're like us, you're like me, I'm thinking, Ryan, you're kind of similar to me. You like to try new things.
Yeah.
You're never going to get to experience them because you're going to never see anyone playing them, and you're not going to know they really exist. Or you're not going to know there's people out there that care about them. I'm not in Tennessee, Devils. I'm actually in Marshall, North Carolina.
I'm in Tennessee.
You're in Nashville.
Yeah, I am. Oh, come on.
You lost your Southerner rights.
I'm from Charlotte.
No, I'm sorry. You're not in Memphis, so you're not based in Arkansas.
True, yeah. But yeah, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, Devil's Theater. If I don't know how close that is to you, but if you're in the metro area, hit me up because I'm looking for people to game with. But yeah, the other game that I want to add to your list there, and I don't know if this is the case for your specific game shop, but Magic the Gathering is really bad about this too. Yes. Magic players will take over a shop.
Yes, they will.
And for game shop owners, comic shop owners, I have to caution any of you who are watching this.
Yeah.
Those, they spend a lot of money while they're there. Emphasis on while they're there. They don't stick around. Yeah. Magic players are very fickle, and whenever the scene heats up somewhere else, they're going to move somewhere else. So you're going to drive yourself out of business if you let the Magic players drive everyone else out of your store. But that really is just like one of the worst things ever when a group devoted to a popular game decides not only are we just going to take up as much space here as possible, we're going to actively shut out other games and other things that people want to do because we view this shop or this convention as our turf
space. Yep. And like I said, I've actually talked to one of the owners of one of the stores. He does want me to come down and demo Song of Ice and Fire at some point. And I told him I would. I got to find the time to do it. And I'm okay with doing that. But he needs to be careful about asking us to demo new games because we're going to have to work really hard if we want to introduce it to the community. Because right now, it's not a friendly place for things that are not Warhammer, particularly 40K.
Yep.
I mean, if you're not playing 40K, I have a 40K army. I haven't played 40K in over a year, over almost 2. And by the way, I have to look away sheepishly when you talk about Magic players because I have 22 commander decks. I play at the house, though. We play kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't begrudge anyone who plays Magic and is cool. I begrudge the Magic players who are your like stereotypical Magic players.
Yeah, I mean, and Magic here has a death grip. Mm-hmm. There's 3 or 4 shops that sell Magic cards here, and that's all they do. And there's nothing wrong with them. They're good people and stuff. It's just the community itself is kind of toxic. I don't like to play in public because a lot of people that play in public are really toxic.
Yeah.
They're sore losers. What's worse is they're sore winners.
Yeah.
I fucking can't stand sore winners.
Absolutely.
Dude, I lose more than I win, and you know what? I still have fun most of the time. The only time I get really pissy is if my deck just decides to completely just bend me over.
Yep.
And I know it's capable. I had a game last week. I should have won the bloody thing, and they won't let me play my decks. They keep killing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you're right. Magic players can be that way, and it's important to also understand gatekeeping in the tabletop space does go far outside of RPGs.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it goes into board games too.
Mm-hmm.
If you get in the wrong game store where they play a lot of European games, and then somebody tries to bring an American game in, they'll make fun of them for being Ameritrash and stuff.
Yeah, you definitely, when it comes to even like bringing in like a skirmish game or something like that, if you've got people who are just over the moon for Ticket to Ride or whatever European board game it is that they're obsessed with, you can definitely and it's the hipster douchey snobbery of the European board game crowd that really just kind of like pushes it over the edge for me.
Well, but Saturday when we get together, we're going to play some Flesh and Blood and some Star Wars Destiny and some stuff we haven't played in a while. We play a lot of games at the house. I actually just picked up a copy of got it cheap. I got a copy of the 2010 Civilization board game.
Gotcha. Which
is a really good board game, by the way. But it's like you couldn't just show up in public with that and expect people to crowd around and want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a really vibrant board game community here, but there's a couple of places that they go, and a lot of people just play board games at home here. And that's not because of the shops. That's just because that's how people are here. They find like 4 or 5 people that like to play the kind of board games they do, and they just get together at somebody's house. Mm-hmm. Playing in public around here can be fun though. Sometimes you'll pull out something really ridiculous like Twilight Imperium and be like, "Hey, who wants to play?" And you get like 3 random people with you who are not prepared for the 8 hours it's going to take to finish the game. So I play, if it's not become clear to the chat and to you, Ryan, I play a lot of stuff. I play card games, I play miniatures games, I play board games, I play RPGs, I play video games every afternoon. We play video games with friends online. Actually, we were doing a Civ 6 game earlier this afternoon, which I had to stop because I had to go make dinner. Mm-hmm. That Ensure plus almonds was not lasting much longer. My lunches are very, very lean right now. But it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous to think that you can be in a situation where people can be like, "Well, I don't like that you do blank. I don't like that you play something I don't like." Well, too bad. Because it's not your choice what people should be allowed to see and not see. And you certainly don't get to look down your nose at me because I do something you don't like. I do a lot of things people don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's just part and parcel of being a human being. People do things I don't like all the freaking time. Rude as hell to you about it too. Trust me, I don't like being in Walmart at 10 o'clock in the morning because there's 1,000 people in it.
Oh, man. For as interesting as 3 a.m. Walmart is, 10 o'clock Walmart is just a nightmare.
Well, it's around here, it wasn't bad until COVID, and then everyone stopped working. You used to be able to go in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be, 50, 100, maybe 200 people in the store. Now there's literally, I walked in there at 11 o'clock in the morning before there's 1,000 people in the store.
Oh, my God. No way. Nope.
They don't have anything to do. They don't work and they don't have anything to do. And for whatever reason, because Marshall's a small area, guess where everyone goes?
Yep.
Hey, I'd rather be anywhere but there, but got to feed myself, unfortunately.
Yep.
So I got to feed 5 pets too.
Actually, Crafty makes a good point here. 12 o'clock after church Walmart, that might actually be the worst.
I think that's hell.
Yeah.
I think what that is God's joke showing us what hell is going to be like.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, on kind of the other side of things, and this is, we'll get back to some of the like bad aspects of gatekeeping. On the other side of things, though, there is an aspect where gatekeeping of a certain variety is not only acceptable, but something that should be practiced. And
which is that was the first thing I mentioned.
Yeah.
Table keeping, what they're calling table keeping.
Mhm.
And that is healthy. It's healthy to keep your community pure and clean from people that are toxic.
Yeah. And even to take that a step further, I was watching a video earlier today by one of my favorite YouTubers, Short Fat Otaku. You guys have probably heard me talk about him on the show before.
Yeah.
He had a video about a year ago, maybe a little less than that, about why you should gatekeep. And his
Sorry, almost hit my trash can from my office chair.
Nice.
But keep going.
There's this aspect of gatekeeping where our hobbies and our interests should be reserved for the people that are actually interested in the games that we're playing, the movies we're watching, the comics we're reading, on down the line. And when you get people who come in and they don't like those things, but they still want that gate to be open to them, where I don't like anything about role-playing games as they are now. So instead of just not playing role-playing games, I'm going to fundamentally twist and change what a role-playing game is to fit my personal preferences for entertainment. Yes. And that's where we want to like kick those people out.
Or alternatively, and it could be this is an example of something you'll see. You're sitting at the table, you're trying to have fun, and somebody just wants to talk politics the whole time.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with telling them, hey, guy, you need to either cut it out or get up and leave. Mm-hmm. And if they just won't cut it out, especially, and this is especially true if you're in a public place like a convention or a store, going to whoever runs the convention, going to the store owner if you know them and saying, hey, guys, we're trying to have fun, and this guy will not stop, and we need him to leave. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that, because that is literally saving your table from itself. Because, if you're like most people, I really don't talk politics when I game. Now, I could talk politics 9,000 hours a day if they were in the day, as long as that's what people wanted to talk about, because kind of what I studied in college. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to talk about it when I'm sitting there playing games about stabbing the orcs in the face or finding the Mythos mystery or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's not the time or the place for me to be doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, and 28, that's a good way to think of it. If you're sitting there trying to role play and somebody just wants to turn it into an MMO, you set expectations for your table. Mm-hmm. And if people don't want to live by the expectations you have for your table, then they don't belong at your table. Period. If that be something like what we talk about, how we play, what kind of games we're playing. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and let's see what Chris has to say here. By the way, Chris, welcome. I'm glad that you joined us from last night. Gatekeeping, keeping out politics that have nothing to do with the games, or they change what a game has been instead of finding a game that they want to play. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I hate this term gatekeeping so much, and why I'm kind of like having to contain myself, because we're going to end up saying it so many times tonight. Gatekeeping is the ultimate Mott and Bailey for a lot of people, because you have this situation where a company like Games Workshop or whoever says Warhammer is for everyone,
except those Nazis.
Well, even like leaving that aside, they say Warhammer's for everyone. And then the Warhammer fans say, well, Warhammer's for anyone who likes Warhammer. I wouldn't say that Warhammer's for everyone. And then the defenders of a statement like Warhammer's for everyone goes, so you're saying you don't want more people to play Warhammer with? Exactly. And then immediately the community's like, no, not at all. It's just, I'm saying, they're like, all right, yeah, then Warhammer's for everyone. And that's where the Motte and Bailey comes in.
Yeah. Well, and to some extent, it's what I said also applies to Motte and Bailey as well. It's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
We want everyone to play Warhammer, except those dirty fascists. Well, who's a dirty fascist? You don't really define it.
Mm-hmm.
You just define it as whoever you don't like, and then you use that as a way to chase people away from the hobby.
Yeah.
And it's just companies that do it, companies that try to gatekeep are disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Hat is the pinnacle of what that looks like. We don't want you to buy our games if you don't agree with our politics. It's the ultimate form of gatekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's literally telling people, we don't want your business. Well, no, you don't want us playing role-playing games because we don't have the right politics.
Right.
By the way, what's the right politics? What's the right social issue? Mm-hmm. Do I have to stand up? Where do I stand to make sure I'm in the right camp? Just because I don't agree with a political or social policy doesn't mean that I can't be respectful of people who disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I said in a video a couple days ago, I said, I've sat across the table from people who are Marxist, and I've had some of the most fun in my life.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were kind of Marxist. Great people, wonderful human beings. As far as their interpersonal skills and stuff, they're nice, they're polite. When it comes to gaming, they don't talk about their own bullshit. We just have fun.
Yeah.
And you know what makes it work that way? It's because they understand that the game's about the game. It's not about what they think about, the latest banking regulation or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Luau Lu points out who Warhammer actually is for. Anyone who has a ton of money and time and no young kids. Yeah.
And a 3D printer.
Yes, and a 3D printer.
I have a 3D printer, man. I printed off a quarter of my army for Kings of War. Mm-hmm. That game's model agnostic, though.
Yeah.
Because it cares about the footprint, not the models.
Mm-hmm.
So I have about 3,000 points of Kings of War Empire of Dust. So
yeah.
Actually, we're talking about playing some Kings of War this weekend because I want to go stabby on some ogres. Actually, I want to go undead dragon breathing fire on some ogres. But,
yeah.
One step at a time. Last game I played, I one-shot a giant.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy was not amused.
Yeah.
I had a 400-point model on the table. What did he think was going to happen? Actually, Orcus, Games Workshop has changed his opinion on 3D printing. As long as the TO is okay with it and your opponent's okay with it, they're okay with it. They've been trying to stop it, and they can't.
Yeah.
They just are not going to stop the 3D printing revolution. It's because the hobby is so expensive, and it's not just 40K. Kings of War is a lot cheaper, and it's still $400 or $500 for a good size army. I mean, it's still a lot of money. You're talking about $500 is the rent for some people in small towns.
Yeah.
I mean,
another good point that Lou makes here. Any company that's so blatantly willing to say, if you don't, believe X, Y, and Z, don't buy our books. At that point, yeah, you pretty much have to say, okay, yeah, I won't buy your books.
Patriot, I would love to show you some of the models I printed, but they're all the way across the house. I actually have some really good print. I have an undead dragon I 3D printed with a Revenant Rider.
Mm-hmm.
He represents my 400-point model in Kings, and he's really cool. He's a really good print too. A little bit pricey, but I use a lot of one-page rules because I sub to their Patreon. Yeah, and I get free models every month.
Mm-hmm. And Scott here, Orcus Dorcas, yeah, Games Workshop branded printers, they're probably working on that right now.
Well, if they're smart, dead serious, if they're smart, they'll start releasing official STLs.
Oh yeah.
and they'll overcharge for them, and people will pay for it.
Mhm.
They'll charge like $30 to get Space Marines, and people will pay $30 to get Space Marine STLs because they can just print the crap out of them.
Yeah. And
And
then
it'll wind up in the end saving them so much money.
and they'll partner with someone like Algu or one of the major manufacturers to get a 3D printer that has the Citadel logo on it, and they'll
It costs
stick them
twice
in.
as much as the original.
Yeah. and they'll stick them in their Games Workshop stores, and you can, like everything that they have, all their official hobby gear, you can buy everything in one place with the same logo on it, so that it's a seal of quality. Those are air quotes for anyone listening to this instead of watching it.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, man. A bottle of resin is about $35, $40.
Yeah.
I wound up with one bottle of resin at one point getting almost 90 models out of it. So I literally I printed an entire Age of Sigmar army at one point for the Skinks, for the Starhost. And that's actually a form of gatekeeping too. This is why gatekeep is such a nefarious term. There's actually a form of gatekeeping that comes from being cost ineffective to enter the hobby as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're charging what Games Workshop charges just to get started, a starter army for Games Workshop game, a full 2,000 point list will run you, unless you're running something different like Custodes or something that only needs a few models, Imperial Knights, you're going to spend between $1,000 and $2,000.
Yeah.
Easily. I know because I probably spent, I have $240 tied up in 2 models.
Yeah.
Albeit that is a Bloodthirster and that is a Scar brand. To be fair, but they're huge models.
Yeah.
Again, they're in the living room. I can't show them to you, but they're huge models. They go on huge. The Bloodthirster goes on a 140 oval base. That's how big he is. I mean, it's not like you're getting a small model, but at $120 a piece. Yeah. And their prices are going up. And they did announce this week they're going to 10th edition, which means they're going to reset all sorts of things, and armies are going to be invalid, and people are going to have to spend another $500 to fix their armies.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's the Games Workshop model. Since we're on this tangent, is they fix just enough to get people to buy the book, but leave just enough broken that they can continuously sell those updated codexes, updated rule books, and just move everyone up, so that it's not enough that you spend $2,000 up front for your army. You continuously spend $2,000 as long as you decide to keep playing this game.
The Titan models for the Chaos Knights and the Knights are about $800 a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they're about 3 feet tall, but I'm not spending $800. I'm not spending 2 car payments to get a model.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic here. That cost almost as much as my computer.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, that's how a lot of smaller model games, miniature games players are. That's how I am. I play Song of Ice and Fire. I have no problem sharing space. None. Because Song of Ice and Fire only requires a 3x3 table, man. You don't need anything special for Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate, because God knows as many moving parts as that game has. You have your tactics deck, you have your models, you have your cards for your units, you have to have wound tokens, you have to have, just talking about it, you have to have activation tokens, you have to have your commander models, you have to have all that stuff. Although my list right now runs Loras Tyrell, so I'm playing Baratheons, because Baratheons are stupid and tanky. The last game I played, I crushed the Lannisters by just killing myself to death. So he wasn't amused with the list. I shouldn't have brought that list out on the guy. It was his first time playing, and I didn't think about it. And I should have brought my Martell list, which would have been a little more friendly.
Yeah.
But you can't win them all. But it is that is something I've discovered with a lot of these smaller games like Song of Ice and Fire and Kings of War. You can actually build armies for Song of Ice and Fire. My Baratheons, I'm only about $300 deep, and I easily can build about 5 to 7 different lists off of what I own. So it's not nearly as expensive I mean, Kings of War, I've got 3,000 points, about $500 tied up, and you only need 2,300 points to play.
Hmm.
Crafty, that's an appropriate way to think of gatekeeping, but at the same time,
Mhm.
you have to think gatekeeping can be a lot more than just keeping you out of the hobby. It can also be ways to barrier to entry. It can be keeping you discouraged from playing what you love. It can be forcing you into playing something you may not really want to play because it's the only way you can play. Like, what if you live in an area where you can't get a home group together and the only thing you can play is 5e because that's all they're playing at the local store? And that's not really what you want to play.
Yep. Now, to Crafty's point here, one of the beautiful things about role-playing games, and the reason why I see this as kind of the last stand for free thinkers, is when it comes down to it, they can change all the books, they can take stuff away, they can stop printing the old editions,
Yep.
but at the end of the day, you can still you still have your old physical copies of books that you love. You still have people who have memorized the rules and could probably run an AD&D game without even referencing the rule book once because they played for so long. All of this can never be taken away. Like, the only way they could take that from you is to take you out back and put 2 in your forehead, which that's very extreme way to keep people from playing AD&D. At the end of the day, that's what makes role-playing games special, and in a lot of ways, I think immune to a lot of this nonsense, is you can't police every single table in every single city and state or every single country. People are going to play the games they want to play, and you can't stop that. So in a way, there is a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of people trying to push specific viewpoints, but at the end of the day, all it takes is a handful of free thinkers to run the table the way they want to.
Yeah, well, and that's how you're going to defeat the weirdo class that's trying to use gatekeeping inappropriately. It's just keep doing what you do. Matt's right. You can play online, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this cautiously. Online play, there's something that gets lost in online play that you miss about being around the table. There really is.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to mention here, because this is an aspect that kind of enables a lot of this gatekeeping that we see. Scott put this down a little bit earlier, but he mentions the disclaimers. Companies put these up because they see these astroturfed mobs that are kicking up dust about specific topics or specific things, and all these companies want at the end of the day is for more people to buy their books, especially when they're owned by someone like Hasbro that thinks they can make all the money in the world. They're going to continue to push whatever it is they think they need to push to get more and more people in the door. And at the end of the day, that strategy is just going to completely tank a company because you can't be everything to everybody. But that's what's enabling a lot of this bad behavior right now.
Well, and that's why companies like Troll Lord and Frog God, Necromancer, all those small companies, even Palladium seeing a little bit of a boost in their sales, it's because they don't put that shit in their games. They just create games for players and let the players figure out how to play it. It's not an attempt to tell you what to think about it or how you should think about their game. Just play it. Everybody that plays, if you play Arda, how the heck you say that? I've never figured out how to say it. So if somebody wants to correct me, feel free. From Troll Lord, every person that runs that probably runs that world just a little bit differently than each other. Minor differences, probably, very likely minor differences, but it's different. Everyone who runs the realms different from each other. There's not a standard way that the realms should look. And the dumbest thing they've ever done, and Wizards has ever done, is say, well, the realms have to be run this way. This is how the realms are. The lore used to always be so just nebulous that you could just be like, I'm going to run the realms the way I want to run the realms. But that shit don't happen no more.
Right.
New Realms is basically Waterdeep has turned into Seattle.
Yeah.
in 2022, and it's 2021 Seattle, and it's unbelievably stupid. I will say this: we're not too far off from the Great Awakening for Shadowrun, and I look forward to serving my orc overlords. So,
and Chris Lundgren kind of expands on this point. The OSR is the thing that scares corporate RPGs because it's actual diversity. And yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, the diversity of thought, diversity of philosophy of play really is kind of the scariest thing to people who want to run the table or run all the tables in the case of role-playing games. This idea...
What you saw here, and that's what the OGL debacle was all about, was killing the OSR.
Yeah.
It was about killing OSR and trying to do away with something that was actually threatening them. And they thought they were going to get away with it legally, and they found out those people were not going to go into the good night quietly.
Right.
So it's it does scare them. OSR does scare. OSR doesn't just scare corporations. It scares a lot of. If you go on Twitter, the thing that gets railed against the most by the blue-haired weirdos is OSR. It's OSR play style. It's OSR thinking. It's old school thinking. It's why Crossface gets so much hate. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that, because he talks a lot about old school mechanical thinking rather than this new school of RPG development. Mm-hmm. They're terrified of it. What you mean? Players are supposed to have fun, not just go murder hobo and rob everybody? No, there should be consequences when you do that at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. Of course, I've been in games where wrong time means that you're in a party where somebody murders somebody and bathes in their blood, but you know, such as an evil campaign. Mm. That was a long time ago. How long ago was that? That was 10 plus years ago. Mm-hmm. Oof, makes me feel old. I'm in my late 20s then.
Mm. It's interesting that you bring up Crossface, because I think that I mean, I love Crossface, and I love everything that he does. I love the messaging that he has about old school gaming. But I think what it's going to take is, on one hand, a guy like Crossface who's just in people's faces saying, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is the way it's always been done. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, this is the best way to play the game. And people are going to like push back and react negatively against that. But then on the other side, you have someone who is saying the exact same thing as Crossface, but presenting it like it's a new idea. And I think that's where, and I know this sounds like Machiavellian and sneaky, but I think that's the only way to make people think that we're not reactionary or regressive, is to present it as some kind of new idea. And I think that's going to be the kind of other side of getting out of this modern funk of like modern game theory that we find ourselves in, is presenting old school ideas as if there's some kind of new revelation.
Yeah. Well, to Crafty and Orcus both, they both mentioned bringing videos and bringing the middle together. Mm-hmm. That's why I like people like Seth Gorkowski. Because he doesn't ever talk politics on his channel. All he does is game reviews, DM tips, player tips. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm trying to drag my channel back towards that and away from all the Drama Llama stuff, because it's the Drama Llama stuff will get me viewers and will get me views, but I always feel really dirty afterwards because I don't feel like I'm adding anything to the conversation. Whereas if I do a video like I did last week where I talk about using languages to create a living world, how languages can impact, culture and can implicate culture and can implicate, real diversity of creation and everything else in the world. A lot of people don't think of languages that way, especially when you talk to newer D&D players where they've gotten used to 3X and beyond language use, where you can know like 17 languages. Old school D&D didn't do that. Most characters in old school D&D spoke like 2 languages, and they were lucky. Go to a second edition player's handbook and look up the intelligence table and see what intelligence you need to learn additional languages, beyond your native tongue and common. It's
and possibly your alignment language as well.
Yeah. If you're a thief, you always knew thieves can't. If you were a druid, you always knew Druidic. But if you're not, if you're not one of the classes, you may start with as little as 2 languages. Maybe a third if the DM is running a world where a third language is appropriate or whatever. But if you're playing stock D&D 2nd edition, it's set in the realms, your native, your common, and then if you have a high enough intelligence, you might know 1, 2, maybe 3 more languages. You might be lucky enough at like 18 intelligence and then gets like 3 additional languages.
Yeah.
Orcus, I've actually heard that several times. He's a nice guy. I really like him. He made that mistake a week and a half ago, where he posted about banning books in school libraries, and he quickly got ripped apart for it. And he hasn't said anything like that since. That's the first time I've ever seen him ever get political. So I don't hold it against the guy. He's entitled to his personal beliefs. He didn't put that shit in a video, and I'll continue preaching his singing his praise of. He does some of the best GM advice videos I've ever seen. Some of the smartest ones.
Yeah, Seth, I follow him on Twitter, and I know that like every now and then he does start talking about his politics on his Twitter, but he never makes its way into his videos. It's also not in his fiction, as far as I've read.
No, I liked it. So I read Damarorion, and I haven't read the rest of that series yet. I haven't gotten back to it yet. I've got so many books I want to read. That's my problem. He's a good dude, but Mr. Welch is in that same category. Couldn't tell you what Mr. Welch's private politics are, period. And I don't really particularly care. Dude, if you want a dude that knows everything inside and out about Mystara, go watch Mr. Welch's videos.
And honestly, I feel the same way about Professor Dungeon Master. When I watch his stuff, I've never gotten a sense that he's lecturing me on politics or anything like that. Maybe someone might disagree with me, but I think he's another good one as far as just dishing out good game advice.
It's the people right now that I would say to avoid, and of course there's Pundit. Just avoid the dude. All he wants to do is put on drama. Which, I mean, he's exposed himself a little bit over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
But the other people, and I actually like the guy. I think he has a lot of good things to say at times, but Diversity and Dragons. I can't grab the link right now, Devil's Theater. Just go to YouTube and type in Mr. Welch. You'll find him. And actually kind of veering back to where we were, Matt's right. Some of the worst people that gatekeep are people who claim they don't like gatekeeping.
Yeah.
I don't want to gatekeep. I think it's necessary right now to salvage the hobby. But the way that I gatekeep is a lot different than or the way I view gatekeeping, the way that I gatekeep myself is I don't buy from certain companies. I encourage other people not to buy from those companies. And I avoid people who actively try to make things about their personal politics, their personal identity issues, whatever. Whether that be trans people, whether that be, somebody claiming that orcs are black people, whatever. If that's how you think of gaming, I don't want anything to do with you.
Right. Yeah. That's why I love it when John, the Basic Expert, calls RPGs elf game. Because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's an elf game. You're playing a game about fantasy. And while I believe there's a lot of deeper meaning to fantasy that speaks really to the human condition, which you guys have seen in my like Twitter breakdowns, at the end of the day, it's about fun and escapism and having a good time and enjoying kind of a transcendent story experience where you and your friends are creating a story in your reactions to a world that's been set up by your game master. And anything that takes you out of that moment, out of that world, and reminds you of the world that you have to live in for the majority of your life, that's bad, and I don't want it anywhere near my table.
Yeah. Well, and it's just how gatekeeping looks. Gatekeeping is a disgusting thing when it happens. It's really disgusting when it happens writ large. And it's like I said, go back to what we originally said. there's the two types of gatekeeping. There's what you consider table keeping, protecting your table, and then there's what a lot of these people are trying to do, which is trying to scare people off the hobby that they find detestable or undesirable. And that goes both ways. I'm going to say again, Pundit does this a lot. Well, these people don't belong in D&D. No, they don't belong at your table.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to what Matt was saying. As long as you can find a group of friends to play with, nobody can stop you from playing, and nobody should try. And that's kind of my mentality about gaming. Look, I personally don't care for Cypher System because of certain people involved in the company.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to tell people who do, well, you're a bad person. How dare you like Cypher System? Yeah, Sean K. Reynolds is a walking pile of human garbage. And Shannon Germain's a total TDS-riddled lunatic. But that doesn't mean people can't enjoy that game.
Right.
My personal taste does not get to impact how you view things. And it should not. And when you hear somebody like Pundit go out there, and Diversity and Dragons does it too, and there's some other channels that do it, and says, these people shouldn't be in the hobby. Well, they probably shouldn't be in the hobby, but we can't stop them from being in the hobby. And we shouldn't try to stop them from being in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just how it is. If you don't understand that, if you can't wrap your brain around that idea, then you're no better than the weirdo classes out there saying, white men need to get out of D&D. You're no better than that.
Right. And for me, my whole thing, and I will talk about my personal politics here for just a second because it's to a greater point. I am an anarchist. I don't want politics in anything. I hate the very idea of it. I'll talk about it. I'll argue about it if you want to have that argument with me. But I don't like any of that stuff interfering in my day-to-day life, much less my gaming life.
Yep.
And if I could snap my fingers right now and remove one thing from the world, I would take all real world politics out of all entertainment.
Yep. Well, like in my case, here's my thing. The number of people who don't actually know what they're talking about when it comes to socio-political stuff is astounding. And by the way, I agree with Shakespeare, kill all the lawyers. That would get rid of 2/3 of politicians.
Mm-hmm.
If people would just stop pretending like they understand everything and all the deep, intricate workings of how a socio-political issue devolves into what it becomes and everything, the world would be a better place. But that's never going to happen because people have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that is a big aspect of the gatekeeping argument right now, is because a lot of it comes from a socio-political viewpoint.
Yeah.
Those people don't think the right way. Well, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I don't care if you agree with me on abortion. Does that impact your ability to look at your character sheet and tell me what you're going to do next round?
No.
Exactly. And if it doesn't, then why the hell does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to something we were talking about very early on. If it comes down to you're going to sit there and all you want to talk about is your personal viewpoint on X, Y, or Z, or you just want to use the game table to espouse your beliefs or espouse how important it is that you're gay or trans or black or insert any identity in politics crap here, I don't want you at my table, because that is absolutely the death knell of a group.
Right. And I think one of the ways forward for us, and again, a way to lift us out of the current state that the hobby is in, because the hobby is not what I would call healthy right now. There is hope for it, but currently there's a sickness in the hobby that needs to be taken care of. And I think the way out of that is for those of us who feel like kind of the biggest companies in the hobby are trying to push us out, we need to be building coalitions with people who maybe don't agree with us on the issues, on the political issues, but who just want to play the game, and essentially form like a phalanx against, we're going to put all this politics in your game. No, all we want is the game. Yep. Just the game, only the game. And people who are a good example of that, Scott here in chat, Orcus Dorcas, I know he and I don't agree on every single issue. But I love Scott and respect him. I love his videos. I've had him on before, and I'm going to have him on next week again. So,
just for record keeping, me and you are fine because we both agree that Kant was an ass grabbing fool.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And even Jim Wampler. Jim Wampler and I probably don't agree on a single political issue, but Jim Wampler has made a fantastic game in Mutant Crawl Classics. Scientific Barbarian is consistently a good product, and he has been very friendly and very helpful to me in trying to get my stuff published. So I don't have a single bad thing to say about him, even though we completely disagree on something that's completely outside of the realm of role-playing games.
And so this is something that I tell people all the time too. Take it from tabletop, take it into a different space.
Mm-hmm.
I can guarantee you most authors I read are not center right or further. They're mostly left wing. I don't care because they write great books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to escape into them. I enjoy them, and I could give a crap less what their politics are. And that's what makes them great authors. The authors I can't stand are like N.K. Jemisin, whose entire book series is like a treatise on how white people are evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think Matt's comments you have pulled up right there is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That last little bit actually encapsulates the entirety of why gatekeeping is dangerous and stupid. Because it should be organic diversity from natural inclusion, which is how D&D really was for a long time, because D&D was a game shared among people who were all outcast. So it didn't matter what people were. It didn't matter if you were gay, you were straight, whatever. You were there to enjoy a game of D&D. And you didn't always, you didn't get to always choose the way we do today through wide swaths of people to play with and wide swaths of games and all that other stuff, because the hobby was so narrow. And it's and how it was applied and how it was actually created and all that stuff. Go back to the 80s, even when there was a deluge of games. Most of those games just got simply ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And which makes me feel bad because there's some games from the 80s that absolutely deserve more love than they get, like James Bond 007.
Yeah.
Or Classified. Classified does a great job of updating that rule set and making it more functional.
I've got Classified on my shelf right over here. It's a fantastic game.
I've got the original rule book, but I've got the PDF of Classified.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And Calvinoni, you are speaking directly to my Calvinist side there, that all people are evil. Yeah, I gotcha.
Well, all people are evil, and let's have a full hour-long discussion on Tula.
Yep.
Indelible Grace, Perseverance of the Saints.
Mm-hmm. Limited Atonement. Yeah, I'm done with that.
Atonement. Can't remember all the letters anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a fun argument to have.
Yeah.
Try sitting in a church going through the book of Romans when you go through the chapter that talks all about election, and try to not to step on that landmine.
Mm-hmm. And then Scott again with another good point. TTRPG social media is so much easier to navigate and enjoy when you treat people like real people and not disambiguate icon in the left-hand corner. And honestly, that's why, and I've noticed an improvement in my mental well-being and in my engagement with other people in the hobby by backing off of contentious stuff and just focusing on, here are my thoughts on this topic in role-playing games. Because I feel like, if nothing else, I'm giving people something to think about, even if they completely disagree with me, which some people have. I'm making them think about the game and not even the politics aspect of the game, just the game itself. They're thinking about concepts in the game after reading my threads or reading similar threads. So that's honestly this is what we should be doing moving forward, is just hyper focus on the game.
Sorry about that. My phone went off because I set it on a sleep mode at 10 o'clock, so everyone leaves me alone after that time.
Gotcha.
And it still went off to let me know it was going to sleep. So if you all just heard a Zelda Secret Discovery sound, that's what that was.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it was, Scott.
Zelda Secret Discovery sound. My whole phone theme is Zelda right now. I'm looking forward to the new game, but I'm not looking forward to being $70.
I have a physical copy of Ocarina of Time for the N64 that I'm holding on to for when my daughter gets old enough to play it for the first time.
Yeah, I still need to go back and beat Breath of the Wild. So I have a lot of games that are in my, wow, I started playing this and I never beat it pile. Octopath Traveler, Bravely Default 2, Legends of Trials of Cold Steel, Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 6 again. I'm like 30 hours deep in all these games. I'm like 40 hours deep into Trials of Cold Steel, and I still haven't beat it. I'm only like 4/6 of the way there. So it's 2/3. I said that awkward. 2/3 of the way there. But it's just so. I'm looking forward to some of the stuff that I'm looking forward to the way that the hobby's going to rubber band. That is one thing I'm looking forward to. I think this whole talk of gatekeeping, I think it's really picked up because I think a lot. So I'm actually with Ginger on this. I think in the next year to 2 years, a lot of this, lack of a better way of putting woke stuff, is getting ready to go out the door. I think a lot of people over COVID and over the lockdown periods and everything else kind of got exposed to what it is, and they don't like it. And so there's a big pushback against it. And I think it's beginning to fight back really hard because it knows it's losing. The way I described it is like watching a boxing match. If you ever watch boxing matches, when a guy is about to lose a fight, he will come out swinging really hard, hoping to knock the opponent out. Yeah. Because it's the only way he can win. And that's really what I think you're seeing with a lot of these leftist weirdos anyways. And nothing to say about the extreme right wing because they've been out of power for so long at this point. My concern is what's going to happen when the pendulum swings back. We got to be careful about not letting it swing too far back to the extreme right.
Yeah. There's going to be this this temptation to raise the black flag at a certain point once that pendulum starts swinging, and you might. I think we all have to kind of be on guard for the people who are going to start throwing up the Roman salutes at that point, because I mean that's what happened in Weimar Germany, and not to bring up that particular argument, but I mean there's historical precedent for it. So we do need to be careful.
And more recent American history is what happened in the 70s and 80s during the rise of the religious right. Yeah, that from about 1945 and the end of the war till about 1977, 1976, right before the rise of Mike Warnke, ironically enough, and all those other supposed Satanist weirdos, the left had a lot of control in this country, and there was a lot of left-wing advancement and progressive advancement. And what happened is when that pendulum swung back, swung back. I promise I speak English. Swung back. It swung back so hard to the right that the religious right, the actual political movement known as the religious right, seized power, and real people went to jail for imaginary crimes. Yeah. I mean, let's not try to put a bow on what the Satanic Panic did to people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And we need, again, it's all. This is what happens when you let omnipotent moral busybodies of any persuasion run things, because they will never leave you alone, because they do so with the approval of their own conscience. That is a C.S. Lewis quote. I did not make that up.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis. That's the C.S. Lewis quote. They're worse than the robber baron because they believe what they're doing is in the moral good. Yeah. At least the robber baron knows he's a bad guy. I mean, it's so that's got to be part of the gatekeeping conversation, and that's why there's such this big push for, oh, you're trying to gatekeep all these people out. No, we're not. In fact, I think the more people playing, the better. But just keep in mind that if these people that are playing are toxic, then they don't belong in the hobby.
Yeah,
they shouldn't have a place in your local community. And I've actually argued that you should gatekeep your local community, not just your table, by spreading word that you've had a toxic player at your table. And let people know who it is, and let them know what they were doing and things like that. And let other people assess the threat to their table based on the information you're giving them. So if you have to tell a person to leave your table because they're just toxic, and it doesn't matter what they're toxic about, if they're just toxic and you go to another friend that you know runs a table and say, hey, if this guy comes to you, I'm going to tell you right now, you probably don't want him at your table because he does this, and that, that should be all there should be. And the reality is that a lot of these toxic people will eventually talk themselves out of anybody wanting them near their table, because nobody wants to be at a table with a bunch of toxic people. And toxic people will try to band together to create groups, and it won't work because toxic people can't stand other toxic people. So really, if you want to talk about gatekeeping the hobby and making the hobby healthy again, the way to make it healthy again is just make it impossible for these people to dwell and live in normal, healthy groups. And I know that sounds harsh to a lot of people, and I've had several people that have told me that sounds harsh, but it's what needs to happen. If you want to talk about bringing health back to the hobby and bringing the healthy aspects back to the hobby, what made the hobby great, that's what you're going to have to do, because you can replace that toxic person with a person who just wants to have fun.
Right. Yeah. And when it comes to like telling other gamers that that you don't necessarily game with about toxic players, think about it from this point of view. If you don't want them at your table, why would you want them at anyone else's table? Like, why would you wish that upon another person just trying to game? So if you run into someone who's legitimately making the game worse for everyone at their table, you need to like tell other gamers, hey, I gamed with this guy. This is what he did. If someone, starts doing this at your table, it might be the same guy, just letting you know, like, this is what I encountered with him.
Yeah. And like I said, people are like, that's kind of harsh. It's not harsh. It's like, it'd be like cutting a cancer out of yourself and then finding out somebody else goes and transplants it into themselves. And you're like, well, why the hell did you do that? I'm trying to keep you from getting cancer. And to some extent, maybe that person will fit in better with another group. And that's why I said, you need to let the other group decide for themselves what they want to do with that person. Yeah. But the truth is, most groups find out there's a toxic player and a table. No more. They won't have a table anymore, because they'll find themselves, like I said, quickly find themselves without a table to play at, because nobody wants to play with toxic people. Nobody wants to sit at a table with a group of people who want to make the game about themselves. Nobody wants to sit at a table with a guy that all he does is complain and whine and moan and bitch. They don't want any of that. They want to sit at a table with a group of people that are there to have fun, to escape whatever, harsh reality they live in. Most people I know that play role-playing games, they use D&D, and I'm going to use a term that is very unpopular. They do use it as a therapeutic. It's a therapeutic in a way that it allows them for just a couple hours each week, or twice a week or whatever, to sit down and just pretend like the crap that's going on around them is not going on. I've gamed with guys going through divorces and stuff. And trust me, if you've ever been around friends that have been through divorces, if you have parents that are divorced, anything like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about, what that does to a person. Yeah. And the time they spend around the table once a week is some of the best times they have, because it's the only time they get a chance to actually have fun and enjoy themselves, because their life at that time is just a living hell. And it is. I hate using that term, because the term therapeutic, when we're talking therapeutic, a lot of people tend to think of it as in terms of, oh, you're saying you should use D&D and talk through all your personal issues. No, I'm saying you should use it as a way to escape the crap that's going on around you. And even if you're having an otherwise good, healthy lifestyle, it's still good to get away for 3 or 4 hours from the news, from the kids, from whatever. It's always a good thing to occasionally get away from everything. Yeah. Even if your life's otherwise good. Trust me. By the way, I apologize. This has been going on the whole time. My dragon is sleeping next to me. He is the loudest animal I've ever owned.
I actually
Absolutely
can't
loud.
hear him. I don't know if anyone else can, but
Well, if you can, apologize. He tends to come through the mic because he's so loud. He snores. He's a bulldog, man. What do you want him to do? He farts, he snores, and he climbs on you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty intense to sit there and, like I said, to think in terms of what you should or shouldn't do at the table. It is, yeah, Maddie, escapism is a better way to think of it than as a therapeutic. But my doctors have encouraged me to think of it as a therapeutic, because when I'm going through a really time, some of the best things I've ever done have been done around a game table.
I would say it's a therapeutic. It's not therapy.
Yeah, and that's the difference. It's a therapeutic, not a therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is where you sit down and you talk to somebody and we go through CBT or whatever form of therapy you're going through and you get help. Therapeutic is something that your doctor tells you should do to help you relax.
Yes.
Like my doctors tell me to read. That's a therapeutic for me. Hey, Ryan, give me just a second. I got to hit the head.
Gotcha.
Too many fluids too fast.
Absolutely. So we'll go through some of these comments at the start here. DM Blackwall, first of all, welcome. And yeah, I definitely think that we're talking about a living, interconnected local community of gamers, and that's something that's very desirable to have. That's why, and I apologize to anyone that I freaked out by doing this that I've encountered online. But if I find out that someone's in Middle Tennessee, I have a tendency to jump on them because, one, I want people to play in my Nighthaven game, and two, I want to know who all is out here. I want to know who's gaming in Middle Tennessee, because I think we should all be connected and all be encouraging each other to run games the best that we can and create a really healthy, thriving gaming community, if nothing else, so that we always have a place to play. And then let's see what else we've got going on here. Chris Lundgren, this is actually an interesting point here, because I have a very similar story. My mom didn't drag me to any anti-D&D lectures. I'm 27. I'm too young for what's the proper prime satanic panic. But I had parents that were very trepidatious about me playing role-playing games of any variety, especially D&D. And, to this day, a lot of my closest friends in gaming are devout Christians of one stripe or another who are also really into D&D. I'm one. Legacy Game Mastering is one. The Basic Expert is one. Luau Lu. There's a lot of us that are both devoutly religious and avid gamers. So I think that's a very common story for a lot of people.
Yeah, the Satanic Panic. My dad's a Baptist minister. And we were part of the Independent Baptist Church during the Satanic Panic. So I'll let you draw inferences. I played D&D in secret for many, many years.
Yep.
And I still, and for the record, I'm like you, still go to church regularly. I still enjoy my religious side, even when I struggle with it.
Scott, yes, I do allow piss breaks. All you have to do is ask.
Well, let me go ahead and tell you this. If he hadn't allowed it, Scott, he was going to get a very good show of me pissing in my chair. So he had options there, but none of them were pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a free show. I mean, that's premium content right there. I can't allow that to get on the air for free.
Man, that belongs on OnlyFans. Actually, I'm the anti-OnlyFans. I have to pay people to subscribe. Matt, there's no favor in burning Palladium books. I love my Palladium books. I have a couple sitting right next to me. Needs to go up with my BTS book. Creature feature, baby. Waiting for him to put the other monster book out and the book on arcane magic, but that's like another 20 years coming, so I won't hold my breath right now.
Scott, that already exists, unfortunately. I'm not one of those creators, but there is a disgraced RPG influencer that was very much a reality for. So
I never want to think about that again.
Yeah.
Knowing the body types of most role players I know, I never want to think about that again.
Yeah.
And Dandelion is correct. The Satanic Panic wasn't a bad thing to most people, to a lot of the people that were engaged in it. They really thought they were fighting Satan. And they were stopping kids from being sexually abused and stuff like that, man. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it such a shame. Tabletopless. I'm going to play strip D&D. Every time you fail, you have to take off a piece of clothing. And it will never be on my channel. I do not think I can blur out that much.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin's hubris makes good kindling.
Yep. But Lou's hitting on something really important here. It's the people who claim to know what the hobby was about, but really didn't, that were actually doing the harm. The other people that I think were doing the harm in the Satanic Panic were the journalists. I think the journalist class was really, like, those were the people who made it so much of an issue. It was 60 Minutes has to do this expose with Gary Gygax, and we have to release these sensationalized stories and books that are completely fabricated whole cloth and tell people that this is what people are getting up to because it sells papers, it sells books, and it gets headlines.
When you had people like Pat Poling being trotted out as an expert, it became a problem.
Yeah.
That woman, best thing people think I'm mean for saying the best thing that woman ever did was die. She did immense damage to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not hold my, like, God knows that if there's a deep pit in hell, she's in it. Because that woman ruined lives. All because she couldn't accept that her son was messed up, very likely homosexual, very, very much out of his element when he was in college at like 15 years old. He was not in a good mental place. He was mentally ill, and she just couldn't accept it. And so she decided to ruin people's lives.
Yep.
I will never back off that statement. That woman did untold damage to people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with Mike Warnke and some other people.
Yep.
I like dipping them in acid before feeding them to feral pigs would not be a good enough punishment.
Yeah. Yeah. And with so many people like this, it's an issue of, and you even see this with the new moral panics, the ones coming from the left side rather than the right side at this point. For so many people, it's just a matter of, I'm not willing to reflect on what's wrong with me or the mistakes that I've made that have brought me to this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's always external. It's never my problem or a problem with, a mistake that I've made. It's always, we have to look for some kind of outside thing to place the blame on because I'm not willing to look at myself in the mirror and give myself an honest assessment of what I've done wrong or what's wrong with me.
Well, and you know what, cancel culture and the way that, and getting back to the idea of gatekeeping and cancel culture and all this stuff is the same exact thing as satanic ritual abuse.
Yep.
Just a different wrapper. It's the same thing at its core. It is a moral panic driven by a small minority of people who think that they have the moral superiority to tell everyone else how to live their lives. Period.
Yep, absolutely.
There's actually a couple in North Carolina that just got out of prison, but they still haven't been able to get their convictions for satanic ritual abuse expunged. They're trying, and they're likely going to get it eventually, but they're like 65 years old. Finally got a new trial order for them because the evidence they submitted at their initial trial was such a farce.
Hmm.
But they were in prison for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And their lives are completely ruined. They got divorced in prison because they couldn't bear the thought of being married and being apart from each other for the rest of their lives. Literally ruined these people's lives. And, if you think that these people on Twitter that are going around trying to cancel people in the RPG space for having their own politics are any different, man, you really need to go do more reading on the Satanic Panic.
Yep. And what it comes down to with a lot of these people is some of them have no idea of what they're doing. It's literally Ender's Game. They don't know that it's real. It's just a game to them. They don't know the reality of what they're doing, but some of them do. And so with a lot of people, especially people that you have personal relationships with, if you see them engaging in this kind of behavior, pull them aside and say to them, like in person, one-to-one, what is your goal in doing this? And, what do you think you're going to accomplish here? Because the end goal for the people that really, really push this is to get someone to rage quit life. We'll put it that way.
Well, and I was going to say, we've started using the term, these people need to touch grass.
Yes.
They do. A lot of these people that are doing this need to touch grass and realize that the people that they're attacking are people.
Yeah.
They're not just a screen name. These are people with real lives, families. And it gets even weirder when you start talking about these weirdos that show up at people's houses and stuff.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I have a 9mm. You ever show up at my house and you're on my curtilage screaming and yelling and threatening me, I will shoot you. North Carolina, you're on my curtilage. You're in my home.
Yeah. And this goes back to something that Scott said earlier on that I just put it back on the screen. It's things are a lot better when you remember that someone's not just a little icon on Twitter. It's a human being. And all people are deserving of, basic dignity, life, liberty, ownership of property, the Lockean concept of rights. That's, I firmly believe that every single person is entitled to life, liberty, and property. And when we start pushing people like saying, you don't have the right to be employed anymore because you believe something that I don't, that's where you start to get into issues where this has gone too far. You've become the monster yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And that's like I said, if these people would get out and realize they're dealing with people, it's one of the reasons that like you don't hear about this type of behavior in a lot of small companies. Because if you start pulling the crap they pull on Twitter in a small company, the company will just fire you. They can do it with companies like Disney or Microsoft or Twitter or wherever else they're working that they support that kind of behavior. You're not going to get away with that in most real world situations. And start screaming about how your coworker is a transphobe because they don't agree with you, and start trying to destroy their lives while they're at work and spreading rumors about them at work and stuff, and see how long you have a job.
Yeah.
They'll fire you just simply to make things easier on them. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what the person that you don't like said. They don't care. Unless that person and for the record, if that person is really saying things that are disgusting and unethical and wrong, they should be fired too. But only if that person's actually doing things that are unethical and wrong. Like if you got a guy running around talking about how we should exterminate all the Jews or something, he absolutely probably shouldn't be employed because he doesn't play well with others. But doesn't give you carte blanche to walk in and say, start spreading rumors about how that person's an anti-Semite and stuff. You know what you do? You bring that to your boss's attention, and you let your management deal with the problem, and don't try to deal with it yourself.
Yep.
And a lot of these people that are terminally online, they don't have lives, man. They live on Twitter.
Yep.
And that's coming from somebody who can't work, and I'm not on Twitter all day. In fact, I rarely use Twitter. I read a couple of posts and then I get off of it. Mostly because most of what I'm reading is just people fighting with each other, and I'm like, not in the mood.
Yep.
Not in the mood. I really have given up completely on the idea of I'm not going to change people at this point. The only thing that's going to change the culture, whether we're talking about tabletop or writ large, is people have got to start just demanding respect.
Yep.
And one of the ways and I'm going to say this, if you ever find yourself, all the guys watching this I'm going to tell you this, if you ever find yourself in a situation where people start threatening your job, start threatening your life, you need to take the proper precautions. You need to contact local police. If they're threatening to kill you, you contact local police. That should be taken very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
If they're threatening to ruin your job, you need to let your management know, hey, there's these weirdos online that are saying that they're going to find out where I work and yada, 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 and be very upfront with your boss.
Yep.
You need to be honest. And if it does come down to they cost you your job or they cost you your home or anything, you need to see, and I know this is the hard part of this, guys, you need to find out if there's a way for you to recover damages through litigation.
Yep.
The only way this is going to stop is if people start standing up to it. It doesn't stop any other way. I cannot stress that enough. If people are going to threaten to kill you, if people are going to threaten to rape you, that is a matter for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Period. And I think too many people don't take that seriously, and then people show up at your home or they mail you suspicious packages. Guys, if you don't read the news every day, you don't find out about this stuff. If you don't watch, certain YouTube channels that have covered it and stuff, there are people there are streamers that were streaming the Hogwarts Legacy, getting threatening emails and stuff with their home address.
Mm-hmm.
That should scare the living piss out of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
These people will have like weaponized autism. It's basically 4chan used for evil.
Mm-hmm.
Although 4chan's not always been used for good. But
it really can get intense out there. And unfortunately, I've let this kind of go over time a little bit. But I mean, this has been a great conversation. And I think at the end of the day, what needs to kind of like come back around, just to end on a positive note here, is we need to be forming communities and keeping communities alive that are all about and 100% dedicated to playing the game for the game's sake itself, and not to spread any kind of message, nothing beyond the game, just the game for the fun and the fellowship. That's what this is all about, the fun and the fellowship of people together. And if we can spread that like all throughout the RPG world and completely expunge the infighting and the toxicity and just the constant, street fights that we end up in online, I think that's for just the betterment of society, not just gaming.
Yep, and that's what I was going to go, kind of where I was going to go, and so like kind of a closing thought kind of thing is, guys, that's what I was trying to get at with the whole, don't let these people, terminally online people, bully you. Mm-hmm. You can have a healthy community, and you can have a healthy local community, you can have a healthy online community, you can have a healthy conversation with people, even people you disagree with. If it gets to the point where it becomes violent, it becomes aggressive, and it really gets to the point where you begin getting worried, then it's gone too freaking far.
Yeah.
Period. And, Blackwall, YouTube's TOS can say what they want. I'm talking about following the law in my state. Period. You're not going to come on my property and threaten me. Period. I'm going to defend myself as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if TOS at YouTube thinks that's inappropriate or not, because it's not their job to police whether or not I feel safe in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for every person that's in the chat. It goes for you, Ryan. You should never feel afraid of where you live.
Yeah, I agree.
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we even have to have that conversation, because there are people out there that will get mad at you and search out where you live and try to find out who you are and try to ruin your life to the extent that they will show up at your home. They firebomb people's houses. They vandalized homes. They break into cars. They assault people.
Mm-hmm.
They try to kill people. All for a difference of freaking opinion.
Yeah.
As completely inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. It's a mind cancer, and it drives people to do things that they might have thought was completely unthinkable, but they've let this rage fester inside of them, and if we can just cut that rage off before it gets too bad, I think that's our duty to do, as as Christians, as I know that you and I are, as people who enjoy this hobby, just as like decent people, we need to de-escalate a lot of these conflicts.
Yep. And that's why I said, if it gets to a point where somebody starts threatening you online, reach out to your local law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know what that looks like, go watch Jeremy Hambley talk about it. He has to do it on the regular right now because people have doxed him several times. He was on vacation and they doxed his mother-in-law, who was watching their home.
Mm-hmm.
He had to fly home early because she was scared to death because people were outside the house. I don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
When something online is, you're so terminally online that you do not understand that you are tormenting people. You need a life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are so terminally online, you don't understand that we're allowed to have differences of opinion, that you have to, and that you will take the idea of gatekeeping to the extent that you will threaten to rape, kill, or maim people. By the way, I don't take what I said earlier very lightly.
Right.
At all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very matter of fact about it. I'm not going to play those games anymore where people think that they're going to threaten me and make me scared of my own shadow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid of people. I'm not afraid of these weirdos. First off, most of these weirdos ever got in a fist fight, they wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But start with that. But I'm not gonna sit there and encourage people to be afraid because these people exist and they don't know how to let things go. And by the way, just so you know, there are people on the extreme right that are just as freaking bad.
Yep. Absolutely.
And so if you think this is a left versus right thing, you're insane. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely. If you're on the left in the chat and you've had a right winger threaten this crap on you, you need to take proper precautions.
Yep.
Because a lot of these people are very serious about trying to run your life.
Mm-hmm.
Very serious about it.
Yep.
And they will do some extreme stuff to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know how extreme they are? Go back about a year now, just under a year now, back in the end of May last year, when a guy showed up at Justice Kavanaugh's house with the intent to murder him and his family for disagreeing with him on abortion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then tell me that this isn't a serious issue and that this shouldn't be taken seriously when you see it being made serious.
Right. Yeah. Well, with that said, thank you so much for coming on the show again. Again, this has been a very productive and good conversation. I feel like, there's been a lot of positive coming out of this. So, I do. This is one of those conversations that gives me hope for the future of RPGs, even though we ended on kind of a dark note there. This is something that.
Sorry, if you can't tell, that's something I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And he dropped a teaser here in chat next week. Orcus Dorcas is going to be my guest again next week, and he's bringing his son and one of the son's friends on, and we're going to talk about how Scott's son Noah has spread kind of this old school mindset of role playing in his high school D&D club. So,
Nice.
We're going to talk about how they came around to these kind of more traditional ideas of role playing, why they're playing the game in the manner that they're playing, how they have presented this to their friends, all of that. We're going to talk a lot about Generation Z and how they are experiencing the game next week. And I know people like to make fun of Zoomers and stuff like that. I make my fair share of Zoomer jokes, but at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones who are playing this game in the future. So it's important to see what they are enjoying, what they're seeking in their games, and how we can talk to them and bridge generation gaps between them and ourselves, and make sure that they're having fun continuously. So that's going to be next week. Until then, guys, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I am so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.